Princess Zora stood at the balcony of her palace, looking out over the city. The twin moons of her home world, Loria, shone brightly in the night sky. But even their beauty couldn't distract her from the weight of the situation. She had just been informed of a political alliance that would change everything in her life. The rulers of Loria had made a deal with the humans of Earth in exchange for protection and trade. Zora was to marry a human soldier. The idea of it filled her with a mixture of anger and fear. She had heard of humans how fragile and weak they were. They were not fit to be her partner. Her father, King Arian, had told her that this marriage was essential for the survival of their planet. The Earth humans had powerful technology, and without them, Loria would fall prey to the enemies that had been gathering in the shadows. But Zora didn't care about politics or alliances. She cared about honor, strength, and pride, qualities that she believed were in short supply among humans. They had a reputation for being wild and unpredictable, yet somehow they had managed to rise to the top of their world. Zora was confused. Why would a race like this be chosen to form an alliance with her people? Princess, the human envoy, will arrive in 2 days, a voice said from behind her. Zora turned to see her personal advisor, Vera, standing in the doorway. Vera was a tall, elegant woman with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. She was one of the few people Zora trusted. "I know," Zora replied, her voice heavy. "I still don't understand why it has to be me. Why can't someone else do it? I'm the future ruler of Loria. This marriage will change everything." Vera stepped forward, her eyes softening. "The king believes this will strengthen Loria's position. It's not just about you, Princess. It's about our people, our survival." Zora's eyes narrowed as she thought about it. "I don't want to be married to someone I don't know. A human, of all things." Vera sighed but didn't argue. "I understand. But remember, you are not just a princess. You are the hope of our people. This marriage could bring peace to the galaxy. You must try to see the bigger picture." Zora nodded reluctantly. She knew her duty, even if she didn't like it. The weight of the crown, the responsibility of her people, it all felt heavier now. As the days passed, the tension in the palace grew. Rumors swirled about the human soldier she was supposed to marry. Some said he was brave. Others said he was foolish. But none of them knew the truth. What would he be like? Would he be strong, as a warrior should be, or would he be a disappointment? On the day of his arrival, Zora stood at the palace gates, waiting. The air was thick with anticipation. Her heart was heavy, her mind swirling with doubts. She had never met a human before, but she had heard enough stories to form an opinion. They were loud, messy, and unrefined. She could not imagine a human being a fitting partner. Fethin looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "I was chosen because I believe in peace, and because I believe that a person's true strength comes from the kindness in their heart, not their power." Zora was stunned. This was not what she expected to hear. In fact, it almost sounded like a challenge to everything she had ever believed in. Her thoughts were interrupted as they entered the palace's main hall. Despite herself, Zora couldn't help but feel a glimmer of curiosity. Maybe humans were more complex than she had given them credit for. Princess Zora sat at the long dining table, the grand room filled with an air of tension. She was expected to welcome Lieutenant Ethan Hall, the human soldier she was to marry. The entire palace was alive with preparations for the meeting. The bright banners hanging from the walls, the golden plates laid out on the table, and the soft glow of candles around the room did little to calm the nervous knot in her stomach. This was a momentous event, and she was not sure how to feel about it. She had seen the human soldier briefly from afar when he had arrived, but now they would meet face to face. She had heard so many stories about the humans, how they were fierce, how they could be unpredictable, but she couldn't imagine what this man would be like. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, growing closer with every step. Zora's heart beat faster. The moment was coming. The door opened slowly, and in walked Lieutenant Ethan Hall, dressed simply in the uniform of a human soldier. He was tall, but not imposing, his dark hair neatly combed and his brown eyes calm. There was no arrogance in his gaze, no bravado in his step. He walked as if he was just another man. and for a moment, Zora wasn't sure what to think of him. "Princess Zora," he said, bowing slightly with respect. "It is an honor to meet you." Zora nodded, her face betraying none of her inner thoughts. She couldn't help but notice that his voice was smooth, steady. It didn't carry the sharpness she expected from a soldier. There was no hint of command, only sincerity. "It is an honor to meet you too, Lieutenant Hall," Zora replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Please, sit." They both took their seats at the long table. The atmosphere was formal, and the silence between them stretched out longer than Zora would have liked. She wasn't sure what to say. He seemed so ordinary. There was nothing about him that matched the image she had built up in her mind of a human soldier. Ethan glanced around the room, his eyes scanning the luxurious surroundings. "Your palace is beautiful, Princess," he said. "It's clear that your people have great pride in their heritage." Zora raised an eyebrow. "You are surprised." He smiled slightly, the corners of his mouth lifting in a way that seemed genuine. "I suppose I expected something different from the stories we hear about your people. We imagine a world full of grandeur, power, and strength. But this seems peaceful." Zora didn't respond at first. She had always been taught that their world was the epitome of strength, a place where power and honor reigned. Yet, there was something about Ethan's words that made her pause. Perhaps her world wasn't as perfect as she had once thought. After a moment, she decided to speak. "And what of your world? I have heard many stories of Earth. What should I expect?" Ethan leaned back slightly, his eyes thoughtful. "Earth is a place of chaos," he said simply. "There's beauty there, yes, but there's also a lot of struggle. People fight to survive. But at the end of the day, what makes us strong isn't the wars we fight or the battles we win, it's the way we care for each other." Zora looked at him, surprised. She had expected him to talk about the strength of his military or the might of his people. Instead, he spoke about care, something she had never truly connected with power. It seemed strange to her. In her world, strength was defined by fighting and conquering, not by kindness. "You believe that?" she asked, her voice soft. Ethan nodded. "I do. I've seen it firsthand. It's easy to fight, to destroy, but it's much harder to build something lasting, something based on trust and compassion. That's true strength." Zora's mind was swirling. Everything he said went against everything she had been taught about strength and power. Could it be true? Could there be a different kind of strength? One that didn't come from domination or fear? The silence between them stretched again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. For the first time since meeting him, Zora felt something shift inside her. She couldn't quite place it, but she felt drawn to him. There was no arrogance in his words, no superiority. He wasn't trying to impress her or prove anything. He was simply speaking the truth as he saw it. "Tell me," Zora said, breaking the silence. "What do you expect from this marriage? From me?" Ethan looked at her directly, his gaze steady and sincere. "I expect nothing," he said softly. "I don't expect you to love me or even like me. I just want us to understand each other. This marriage isn't about us. It's about our people, and if we can make that work, then that's enough for me." Zora was taken aback by his honesty. She had expected him to try and win her favor, to flatter her. Instead, he spoke plainly, with a depth of understanding she hadn't anticipated. There was no pressure, no attempt to sway her heart, just a quiet acceptance of what was to come. For a long moment, they sat there in silence, the weight of their roles as leaders settling over them both. Zora looked at him, her mind racing with new thoughts. Maybe she had misjudged him. Maybe the humans were more than just a wild, unpredictable species. Maybe, just maybe, there was something to what Ethan said about strength, about kindness. As the meal continued, the conversation shifted, but Zora found herself listening more intently, trying to understand this human soldier who had challenged her beliefs in the simplest of ways. She couldn't deny that she was intrigued, though she wouldn't admit it out loud. The evening ended with more polite words and formal goodbyes, but Zora's thoughts lingered on the conversation. Ethan Hall was not what she had expected, and that, she realized, was only the beginning. As the days passed, Princess Zora found herself spending more time with Lieutenant Ethan Hall. Though their interactions were always formal and brief, there was something about the human soldier that kept her intrigued. He had a calmness to him, a quiet strength that was different from the loud, boastful power she had expected from humans each time they met. Zora couldn't help but notice that Ethan was always polite, never rushed, and always willing to help those around him without hesitation. One afternoon, as Zora walked through the palace gardens, she spotted Ethan, helping a group of palace staff carry heavy crates. She wasn't sure why he had volunteered, but she watched him lift the boxes with ease, his face showing no sign of discomfort. His hands, though rough from years of hard work, moved with precision. He seemed completely at ease, as if lifting crates was nothing more than a simple task. Curious, Zora approached, her footsteps soft against the grass. Ethan looked up as she drew near, his expression unchanged. "Lieutenant," she called out. "What are you doing?" Ethan paused for a moment before standing upright, wiping a small bead of sweat from his brow. The palace staff had a lot of work to do. "Your Highness, I thought I'd help out." He smiled slightly, his brown eyes warm. "It's nothing special, just a little assistance." Zora's brow furrowed in confusion. "But you're a soldier, not a servant. You should not be doing such work." Ethan shrugged. "Helping is not about who you are, Princess. It's just about what needs to be done. People here have a lot on their plates. If I can make their work a little easier, I will." Zora stared at him for a long moment. She had been raised to believe that those with power and status didn't have to do such things. She had been taught that helping others was a duty for the lower classes. But here was a soldier, someone who was supposed to fight and protect, taking the time to make others lives easier. It didn't make sense to her. "Is this something humans do often?" she asked, her voice more thoughtful than she intended. Ethan smiled, lowering the crate he had been holding. "We do what we can, when we can. It's not about being important or not. It's about doing what's right." Zora couldn't find the words to respond. She had always seen herself as someone who was expected to lead, to command, to be the one people looked up to. And yet, here was a soldier, someone who wasn't even from her world, showing more humility and compassion than she had ever witnessed. She wanted to ask more, to understand him better, but the conversation was interrupted by a loud voice calling her name. It was Vera, her trusted advisor, signaling that it was time for her next meeting. "Excuse me," Zora said, turning away. "I must go." Ethan nodded respectfully. "Of course, Princess. I hope you have a good meeting." The world that she had never considered before. He spoke of helping others, not for reward or recognition, but simply because it was the right thing to do. As Zora walked past one of the palace courtyards, she spotted him once more. He was sitting alone, reading something in a quiet corner. She hesitated for a moment, then walked over. "Lieutenant," she said, her voice softer than she had intended. "I've been thinking about what you said, about strength." Ethan looked up, surprised. He had never expected her to approach him so directly. "What about it, Princess?" "You said that strength isn't just about power," Zora began. "That it's also about kindness and helping others." He nodded, his expression kind. "That's right. A person's true strength shows in their actions toward others, not in their ability to fight or control." Zora sat down beside him, her mind spinning. "I've spent my life learning about leadership, about battle. I was taught that only those who win wars and conquer enemies can be called strong. But now, I'm not so sure. Your words, they make me wonder if there's more to strength than what I've been taught." Ethan's eyes softened as he listened to her. True strength isn't just about what you can take or what you can win. It's about what you give, the ability to care for others, to understand their struggles and help them. There's a lot of power in that. Zora nodded slowly, trying to process his words. She had never considered that before. Helping others, showing kindness, that could be just as powerful as fighting and winning. Maybe even more so. She looked at him for a long moment, feeling a strange pull in her chest. It wasn't love, not yet, but there was something something that made her question everything she had known about power, about strength, and about the future she was supposed to embrace. The sun was beginning to set, casting a soft golden glow over the palace gardens. Princess Zora walked slowly along the path, her mind still buzzing with the conversation she had shared with Lieutenant Ethan earlier. She couldn't stop thinking about what he had said, how true strength wasn't just about fighting or winning wars, but about the ability to show kindness and care for others. It was a concept that felt completely foreign to her, but for some reason, it felt like the first thing she could truly understand about humans. As she walked, she spotted Ethan sitting by the fountain, his gaze lost in thought as the water splashed gently beside him. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should disturb him, but something inside her told her that this was the right time. There was something in the air today, something different. Taking a deep breath, Zora approached him, her footsteps soft. Against the stone path, "Lieutenant," she called, her voice a little unsure. Ethan turned his head and looked up, his calm expression lighting up with a warm smile when he saw her. "Princess Zora," he said, standing up quickly, as if surprised, but pleased by her presence. "I wasn't expecting you." Zora smiled faintly. "I wanted to speak with you, if you have time." "Of course, I have plenty of time," he replied, gesturing to the space beside him. "Please, sit." Zora took a seat on the stone bench next to him. The cool breeze ruffled her hair as they both fell into a comfortable silence. For a moment, she just watched the water flow, the soft sound of the fountain creating a peaceful atmosphere. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversations lately," Zora began, her voice gentle but filled with curiosity. "About what you said about strength and helping others. I've been taught all my life that strength comes from power, from ruling over others. But now, I feel unsure. It feels like there's so much more to learn, and I'm not sure where to start." Ethan's expression softened, and he looked at her with an understanding that made her heart beat faster. He nodded slowly. "It's not easy to rethink everything you've been taught. It takes time. But I believe that sometimes the best way to be strong is to help those around you. The kind of strength that can protect others is a lot more lasting than the kind that only comes from defeating them." Zora glanced at him, trying to understand. "But what if helping others makes you weak? What if it makes people take advantage of you?" Ethan paused for a moment, thinking. "I understand that fear, but think about it this way: helping others doesn't mean you're giving up your own strength. It means you're using your strength to lift someone else up. And when you help someone, when you make their life better, you're not only building their strength, but also your own. There's a power in lifting people up, rather than pushing them down." Zora's mind raced as she processed his words. She had always believed that ruling over others was the way to true power. That strength came from being in control, from keeping everyone else beneath you. But the more she listened to Ethan, the more it felt like the world he described was completely different from the one she knew. She glanced at him again, meeting his gaze. "Do you truly believe that helping others is what makes someone strong?" Ethan looked into her eyes and nodded. "I do. It's not about how many people you can control. It's about how many lives you can make better, how many people you can protect and care for. That's the kind of strength that lasts." Zora fell quiet, the weight of his words settling over her like a heavy cloak. She had never thought about strength in this way before. She had always been taught that strength was about control, about being the one in charge, the one who made the decisions. But what if there was more to it? What if true strength came from something far more complicated, something less about domination and more about kindness and understanding? As the moments passed, she felt a small shift inside her. It wasn't much yet, but it was there. A tiny seed of doubt had been planted in her heart, and it was growing with every word Ethan spoke. She couldn't ignore it anymore. "I think I've been wrong," Zora said softly after a long pause. "I've spent my life believing that strength meant being the strongest, the most powerful. But what you're saying, it's different." Ethan didn't say anything at first. He just nodded, as though he had expected this moment. "It's okay to rethink things, Princess. The world changes, and we change with it. Strength doesn't have to be what we've always thought it was. Zora turned her gaze back to the fountain, her mind whirling. She didn't know what all this meant yet, but something about the way Ethan spoke made her feel different for the first time. She wondered if her beliefs had been too narrow, too focused on one kind of power. What if she had been missing the bigger picture? She looked back at him, feeling the pull of something she couldn't explain. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for showing me a different way." Ethan smiled gently. "I'm just speaking what I believe, Princess. It's you who will decide what strength really means." Zora smiled back, though there was still a feeling of uncertainty in her heart. She wasn't ready to let go of everything she had known, but for the first time, she wasn't sure if she needed to hold on to it all. Maybe there was room for change. Maybe there was a different kind of strength that she could embrace. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Zora felt a sense of calm she hadn't known before. She didn't have all the answers, but the journey she was on, this journey with Ethan, felt like it was just beginning. And for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed felt different for Princess Zora. She couldn't shake the thoughts that had been stirring in her mind since her last conversation with Ethan. Lieutenant Hall," she called, her voice soft. Ethan stopped in his tracks, turning toward her. His face broke into a smile when he saw her. "Princess Zora," he greeted her warmly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Zora nodded, a small smile on her lips. "I was just passing by. I wanted to speak with you." Ethan raised an eyebrow, looking curious. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Zora hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to begin. Her thoughts were still swirling in her mind, and she wasn't entirely sure how to express them. "I've been thinking," she started slowly, "about what you said the other day about strength. I've been taught that strength comes from power through battle, through leadership. But now, I'm starting to realize that maybe it's not all about that. Maybe it's about something else." Ethan's expression softened, and he took a step closer to her. "I'm glad you're thinking about it," he said quietly. "It's not easy to question everything you've known, but sometimes that's how we grow. Strength isn't just about winning or defeating others. It's about building something that lasts." Zora took a deep breath, her gaze focused on the ground. She wasn't sure why, but it felt like something was changing inside her. "I've always believed that the strong are the ones who control, who lead others by force. But I'm beginning to wonder if there's more to it than that." Ethan nodded, understanding. "There is. True strength comes from the ability to protect, to guide, to help others. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. It's about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy." Zora's heart began to race as she listened to him speak. His words weren't just ideas, they were real. They felt like a truth she had never considered. She had always been taught that strength was something to be feared, something to be admired from a distance. But Ethan was showing her that strength could also be kind, gentle, and deeply compassionate. For a moment, they stood in silence, the air around them still. Zora looked up at him, meeting his gaze for the first time without the wall she had put up before. "You're not what I expected," she said softly. "You're different from the stories I've heard about humans." Ethan smiled, a small but sincere smile. "I've heard a lot of stories about your people too. But I think that's the thing about stories, they're never the full picture. There's always more to someone than just the stories we hear." Zora nodded, her mind racing. She had thought she understood what strength was, but now she realized how little she truly knew. Ethan wasn't just a soldier, not just someone who fought battles. He was someone who cared, who chose kindness over cruelty, who saw strength in helping others. It was a lesson she had never learned before, but one she was beginning to embrace. "I think I've been wrong," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I've been looking at strength all wrong. I've spent my life trying to be the most powerful, to lead with force. But now I see that there's a different way, a better way." Ethan's smile grew, and he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "It's never too late to change, Princess. You're already on the right path. And that's the kind of strength that will change the world." Zora felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had always felt the weight of her title, the pressure to be strong, to live up to expectations. But now, for the first time, she realized that true strength wasn't about carrying the world on her shoulders. It was about understanding the world around her and using that understanding to help those who needed it most. As the days passed, Zora found herself thinking more and more about the lessons she was learning. Her conversations with Ethan had opened her eyes to a world of possibilities she had never considered. She began to question the way her kingdom was ruled, and whether the path of power and control was truly the right one. There was a growing sense of doubt inside her, a sense that maybe she could be a different kind of leader, one who led not through force, but through compassion and understanding. Ethan had shown her that strength wasn't something you had to take by force. It was something you could give, and that realization was changing everything. Princess Zora had never imagined that her life would change so much in such a short time. The more time she spent with Lieutenant Ethan, the more her views of him and of humans in general shifted. It wasn't just about learning new ideas. It was about realizing that perhaps the path she had always walked wasn't the only one worth following. The days continued to pass, and the Alliance celebrations were fast approaching. Zora found herself spending more time with Ethan, their conversations growing deeper with every passing moment. What had started as a formal, duty-bound connection had begun to feel like something more. Zora had begun to notice that Ethan wasn't like other soldiers she had met. He wasn't focused on himself or his pride. He didn't speak with arrogance or demand attention. He quietly carried out his duties, always willing to help others, always concerned about the well-being of those around him. It wasn't just kindness, it was the way he lived. Everything he did was thoughtful, his actions driven by a deep sense of responsibility. One afternoon, while walking through the palace gardens, Zora found herself lost in thought again. She was beginning to realize just how different Ethan was, but she also found herself growing fond of him. She wasn't sure when it had happened. It hadn't been an obvious thing, a sudden shift in her heart. It had been gradual, like the slow change of the seasons. She sat down on a stone bench, the soft sounds of the fountain filling the air. The breeze was warm, and the sky was a beautiful shade of blue. But all Zora could think about was Ethan, the way he listened to her without judgment, the way he made her feel like her thoughts mattered, the way he had been there for her when she had struggled with doubts. Princess Zora, the voice, broke her from her thoughts, and she looked up to see Ethan walking toward her. His warm smile made her heart skip a beat, though she quickly dismissed the feeling. She had so many questions, so many things she needed to understand about herself, about him, and about the future. "Lieutenant," she greeted him, standing up to face him. "What brings you here?" Ethan chuckled softly. "I was hoping to find you. I thought maybe we could talk. I've noticed you've been deep in thought lately." Zora felt a slight flush spread across her face. She couldn't hide her inner turmoil from him. It seemed he always knew when something was bothering her. "I've been thinking about everything, about what I've been taught, about what you've said, about what I've seen. I feel as though my whole world is shifting. I'm not sure where to stand anymore." Ethan stepped closer, his expression softening. "I know it's a lot to take in, Princess. Change is never easy, but the important thing is that you're starting to ask the right questions. That's how we grow." Zora looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "You've taught me so much about strength, about what it really means to be strong. But I'm afraid that it's too late for me to change. I'm supposed to be the future ruler of Loria. How can I be a leader when everything I've believed is suddenly falling apart?" Ethan's smile softened as he stepped closer, offering her a reassuring look. "Change doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're evolving, learning. You're still the future ruler of Loria, but you're becoming something even greater, a ruler who leads with compassion, with understanding. That's what your people need. Someone who will show them that there's strength in kindness and strength in protecting others, not just in conquering them." As they stood together in the quiet garden, Zora felt a bond between them that she hadn't expected. It wasn't just about their duties. their roles as leaders of their people. There was something deeper, something that connected them in a way that words couldn't fully explain. It was more than just a duty to her people. It was about understanding and trust, and about seeing the world in a way that she never had before. It was about learning from each other and realizing that strength came in many different forms. "I don't know where this path will take us, Ethan," Zora said quietly, looking into his eyes. "But I want to walk it with you. I want to learn more, to grow more, and to be the kind of leader I can be proud of." Ethan's smile grew, and for the first time, Zora saw not just a soldier, but someone she truly trusted, someone she could count on. "I'll be here for you, Princess, every step of the way." And in that moment, Zora knew that everything was about to change. She wasn't just the future ruler of Loria anymore. She was something more, a person capable of leading with strength, compassion, and a deep understanding of what it meant to be human. The day of the Alliance celebration had arrived, and the palace was filled with excitement and anticipation. The grand halls were adorned with beautiful decorations, shining with gold and silver, and the air was thick with the sound of music and laughter. Guests from many different worlds had gathered to witness the historic event. But amidst all the grandeur, Princess Zora felt a strange sense of calm, a quiet certainty that she had not felt before. For the first time, she wasn't just going through the motions of her royal duties. She wasn't merely preparing for a marriage out of obligation or tradition. Today felt different. Today, she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one that was no longer defined by the strict rules of power and control. It was a chapter where kindness, understanding, and compassion could guide her every decision. As she stood in front of the grand mirror, Zora adjusted the final touches of her dress. The fabric was rich, a deep blue that shimmered with every movement, and the intricate designs embroidered along the edges spoke of her royal heritage. Yet, in her heart, Zora knew that it wasn't the dress that mattered today. It wasn't the crown or the title. It was her decision to lead in a new way, to embrace the strength that came from caring for others. She took a deep breath, glancing at her reflection. "You're ready," she whispered to herself. As she made her way toward the palace's great hall, she passed by the many guests, but her eyes searched for one person in particular. She found him standing near the entrance, looking as calm and steady as ever. Ethan. He was speaking to a few members of the royal guard, offering advice and listening carefully. Just as he always did, his presence was unassuming, yet it held a quiet power that Zora had come to admire. When their eyes met, Ethan's face lit up with a gentle smile. It was a smile that had become familiar to her, one that always made her feel at ease, as though everything would be all right. "Princess Zora," Ethan said, his voice soft yet full of warmth. "You look beautiful." Zora felt a smile tug at her lips as she approached him. "Thank you, Ethan. But it's not the dress that matters, is it?" Ethan's smile deepened, and he shook his head. "No, it's what's inside that matters, and you've changed in a way that's truly remarkable. You've embraced a strength that few rulers have ever known." Zora looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had come so far from the person she once was, the person who believed strength was defined by dominance, by control. Now, she knew that true strength came from leading with compassion, from understanding the needs of her people and working together to build a better future. "I couldn't have done it without you," Zora said quietly. "You've shown me a way of thinking that I never imagined, and because of you, I can now see a path forward that feels true to who I am." Ethan's expression softened. "You always had it in you, Zora. You just needed to believe in yourself. I'm just glad I could be here to help you see that." The sounds of laughter and music echoed from the grand hall as the doors opened wide, and the guests began to make their way into the celebration. Zora took a deep breath and nodded toward Ethan, her eyes filled with determination. "It's time," she said, her voice steady. Together, they walked into the grand hall, side by side. As they entered, all eyes turned toward them. The guests paused their conversations, the room falling silent for a brief moment. Zora felt the weight of their gaze. But for the first time, she didn't feel nervous or afraid. She felt confident. because she knew she was no longer just fulfilling a duty, she was leading in a way that was true to her heart. The ceremony began with the usual formalities, the exchange of vows, the signing of the treaty, and the ceremonial gestures that symbolized the unity of their two worlds. But as Zora stood before the crowd, her heart swelling with pride, she realized that this moment wasn't just about the political alliance. It was about something far more important. This was the beginning of her journey as a new kind of leader, one who didn't rely on the fear of others, but on their trust and respect. One who understood that true strength was not about domination, but about lifting others up. As the ceremony ended, Zora and Ethan stood together, facing the guests. Zora raised her hand and, for the first time, addressed the crowd as their future ruler. "My people," she began, her voice strong yet filled with warmth. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for Loria, not just because of this alliance, but because of the new understanding that we have reached. We have learned that strength is not just about power, it is about compassion. It is about helping one another, protecting one another, and working together to build a future that we can all be proud of." The guests listened intently, many of them nodding in agreement. Zora's words, though simple, carried a power that resonated with everyone in the room. She wasn't speaking from a place of authority or control. She was speaking from the heart. As we moved forward, she continued, "I ask all of you to remember that we are not just allies in this treaty, but partners in a shared future. Together, we can achieve great things, not through force, but through understanding and cooperation. This is how we will build a future that is strong, not just for Loria, but for all of us." There was a moment of silence before the room erupted into applause. The guests cheered, and Zora could feel the warmth of their approval. She had done it. She had found her voice. And with Ethan by her side, she had stepped into the future as the ruler she was always meant to be. As the celebration continued into the night, Zora and Ethan stood together, looking out over the crowd. Zora felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had started on a new path, one that was filled with promise and hope. And though there would be challenges ahead, she knew that she was ready to face them, with kindness and strength guiding her every step.